Okay, I think we're ready to call to order the 22nd meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. We will start out with the approval of minutes. I think we have the minutes for the July 31st meeting and the August 7th meeting. We don't have the minutes for August 8th. Commissioner McHugh, by the way, is on vacation this week, a well-deserved vacation, I might add. So do we have comments on either? Let's look at August 7th.
I have a couple of very minor typo comments.
Yeah.
This seems to be the result of the transcript. There are a number of that's that are repeated throughout.
Yeah, I got it.
Two that's, but, so it's typographical, so.
Janice, can we give these to you? Yeah. There also were two words that I had on page 2 in the first paragraph, the third line, fourth line from the bottom, the last, second to last sentence, page 2, top paragraph. It says, as soon as the Secretary of State publishes the final version of the regs, the RFA 1 applications can be accepted, and I think that really means issued. Doesn't that?
I'm sorry,
Right. It's this next to last sentence in the first paragraph on page 2. Starts out, as soon as the Secretary of State publishes the final version, the RFA 1 applications can be accepted, and I think it probably means, it should say issued.
You're correct.
Right,
Yep.
okay.
Makes more sense.
And then on, this is really minor, but on page 5, in the second paragraph, additional hires, third line down, under additional hires, it refers to begin the search for general counsel as well as executive director of the IEB. It's really deputy director, yes, of the IEB. We may talk about titles, but for the time being, those are the titles that are in the legislation. So let's just give these to Janice. And anybody else have comments?
Yeah, on page 8, just quick typo, I think it's the diversity inclusion form as opposed to
Form, yeah, good point, right.
And then down below, when we talk about the research agenda, the second sentence says, if there are enough responses, an RFP may be issued. I would say an RFP will be issued.
Technically, not really. It may or may not, depending on the RFI.
Okay.
Depending on the responses, the commission may decide to issue an RFP or not.
Okay.
Okay, he's the will expert, so
I know.
whatever Enrique says.
Gives us flexibility.
Right, okay. Anything else? All right, let's look at July 31st. Anything?
It's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, okay. So with those adjustments, those amendments, somebody want to move?
I make a
acceptance?
motion that we approve the July 31st and August 7th meeting minutes.
And 31st, did you say both?
I did.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
good. Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, on to item 3, administration, the executive director search update. Commissioner,
Sure.
Mr. Recruitment.
Just had a call with the folks at jury staff this morning. They are continuing to call through the list of, I believe, 45 to kind of 50 contacts or references that they started with. I have looking at 2 calls scheduled on Friday, kind of initial interview calls. If those pan out, then we would invite those candidates to come to Boston for a one-on-one meeting. We have the posting up. We talked about creating a closing date on that posting. The recommendation would be sometime after Labor Day, since a lot of people are out in August, may not have a chance to see it. My recommendation is we close the business on September 14th. Again, it doesn't stop us from screening and moving ahead with qualified candidates that jury staff has recommended, but in terms of just closing date for the posting, I think would be helpful.
When did we post it?
I think it went up
July 30th?
July 30th.
31st.
So the end of July, but we're, August is such a quiet month anyways. People away on vacation may not see it. I just think for efforts of transparency and openness and trying to solicit abroad a pool of applicants as possible, just leaving it up for that short period after Labor Day. I think Labor Day is the 3rd, so this would be essentially the Friday of the following week. Again, it's not slowing us down in terms of contacting people or doing follow-up with potential applicants, but I think it just sets a deadline for the posting.
Would it slow us down if you just think through, where are we now? We're basically in the middle of August. If we came to, if we thought we had 2 or 3 or 4, I guess, targeted finalists, might we have that by September 7th? So we don't want to sit on our hands for a week? Or is that too fast?
Again, I throw it out for everybody's consideration. I just kind of went, anybody coming back after Labor Day has maybe, again, a little over a week to think about it, pull a resume together and get it into us on the 14th. We can turn around Monday the 17th and say, we have our list of 4 to 5 finalists that we want to begin to put in front of the commission. It's not slowing us down in that perspective, but, on the outside chance that an incredible candidate that somehow we missed comes through, I think giving them that little extra window of time after the Labor Day holiday would be helpful. But
You guys okay with that?
I think the chair, Mr. Chair's point about maybe the 7th would be, in this day and age where people have BlackBerries and communication is much easier, I can't imagine there's a serious candidate who would have missed it for that long.
okay.
So I just think the 7th does give us an extra week, especially where it may take us time, once an offer is made, to get someone, if the person has to relocate, all of that is time-consuming, I think. And when in July did that was that posting on?
It was the end of the month. It was either the 30th or the 31st.
30th.
when we put
So
it
that
out.
would be 5 full weeks, correct?
5.5.
Which I think is,
And I did want to make a point, that's when we did the official posting after a number of days talking about it here.
Right.
And because we were hashing out the details of the job description, we had already, announced and talked a lot about our search, an ongoing search, even when we were hiring the search firm.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Okay. I'm fine with the 7th. My goal was, let's set a date,
Yeah.
yes.
allow for a little window of time after Labor Day, but I'm happy with the 7th if that's agreeable to everybody.
that sounds fine.
Okay. So let's do that. We'll set the 7th as the closing date.
Yep.
And what else, just out of curiosity, what else do you see so you're talking to people, that means the search firm will have already, say, these 2 people you're gonna talk to, search firm has already vetted them, think it's worth your having an oral interview.
Right.
And then if they get through the oral interview with you, then you would bring them in for, you all to talk to.
Right. Jury staff has been great in terms of kind of aligning some questions which are easier, open-ended questions to conduct by phone, more detailed questions. And another point I want to make is that jury staff will be reaching out to each of you individually to pull some questions together, which I think will probably get more to some nuts and bolts questions about the operation of the commission and their experience, which I think would help us. I would save those for the one-on-one in-person interviews as
Right.
opposed to, this is a general discussion, feeling somebody out about the position, about why they might be interested in the opportunity, and saving them a trip to Boston if in the
Right.
end we didn't get a feel that, they were right. But using the second one-on-one interview to really get into the nuts and bolts questions that we all have as individuals, is, our priorities for how we see the position fitting in.
Okay.
So that's all I had to report, and we'll get the posting date or closing date up on the website.
I have a question relative to process as something that we may or may not want to consider, but I was thinking whether it would make sense to have finalists, however many, or those that pass some initial screening, write down a type of application to be submitted to the commission, if you will. Some form of open-ended questions in writing, you know, so what you are describing somewhat, but having be part of, you know, a written record. I'm wondering if that could help the rest of the commission sort of see the responses or the thoughtfulness of the applicants.
You mean when we see, for the finalists?
Yes.
Just for the finalists?
Yeah, or maybe a larger group. I mean, finalists may be really important, but whether it makes sense to have that on a larger group. I'm just tossing it out as.
No,
as an option.
it's a good question, a good option. I was considering pursuing having, again, a list of questions which we ask every candidate, so we're not picking and choosing around questions for an individual. And I would kind of complete those questionnaires or responses as I was going through the interview process, and then share those kind of answer sheets with you. But if that suits kind of the end game you want to pursue, that's fine. Or, you know, we could put it to a candidate to fill them out, but I thought I would simply, you know, complete the answers as we went through the interview.
Okay, just understanding the process.
Okay, great. Additional hires, we mentioned the ombudsman down below. We'll talk about this racing, but I guess we're gonna take a brief pause on this because Commissioner McHugh is working on the job description for the general counsel, and you're working on the racing commission, and you two are collaborating on the deputy director for the IEB, Investigations and Enforcement Bureau. And I guess the only other one is the junior attorney. Where's the staff attorney?
Yeah, I can give a brief update on the staff attorney. There's a number of respondents that jury staff has now compiled, and the process is that that would go to Jim, Commissioner McHugh, given his expertise in the area. He requested that he be given 10 resumes that he can then look in and select maybe 3 to interview, which he wants to do.
Okay.
So when he comes back from vacation, that will be ready.
Okay, great. And we definitely sorted through all the people who came in over the transom earlier on, right? That either for this one or for that matter for the ED.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. The next item is one of our biggest ones for the day, which is the employee manual. Something I think our audience will be sitting on their edge of their seats, waiting for the discussion. But let's go to Commissioner Zuniga to walk us through this.
Thank you. I submitted as part of the packet these, what constitutes the directory of the employee manual and policy questions in the relevant sections that I thought would be worth of initial discussion in an open meeting. I can take them one at a time, I suppose. Initially, we have this general statement about employment at will at the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. There is specific language that stipulates the current status of the commission. But the policy question here is whether that may or may not be the case in the future as it relates to employees coming in, again, in the mid or longer term.
Do we have any analogs? I think you and I might have talked about this, but are there other agencies which have similar missions that give us a model of
Yeah,
this?
there's a couple of a couple of points to look, or areas to look at. We could look at the lottery, for example, here in Massachusetts, that has nexus or has similarities to what this commission may one day be. One that has a management structure in central offices, but also has inspectors and that do a lot more of the on-the-ground work. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there are union employees as part of that, within the lottery, but not at the management or central office structure. I've made inquiries to our consultants relative to other commissions throughout the state, throughout the country, and the general feedback is that there does not seem to be a lot of union employment in these commissions in other jurisdictions, which may be more a reflection of the other states, not necessarily the commission, but that's, or the commissions, that's.
Do you have a sense of that in what the situation was in New Jersey?
Yes. See, again, the commission is separate from the Division of Gaming
Yeah,
Enforcement,
right.
which had all of the enforcement and background
Right.
investigation folks who are union employees.
Right.
The commission itself, it's my understanding that those folks are not union employees, but that is more the management structure
Right.
and support rather than the actual investigators. I know ABCC here in this
That's right.
state also has a combination, same, very similar to the lottery. The folks that are out there in the field are union employees, but the management staff is not. And one of the things we have to take into consideration are those employees coming over from racing, which presently has 3 separate unions. So, it's just one of them, we probably will not have union employees, but the other 2 will be union employees. But it's still we have the discretion to move in either direction.
Right.
But it is something to consider, those folks that are already part of a union that will be our employees.
Right.
I think this is, at least this particular question in my mind, is a really good example of how this manual could really evolve. We may have some reality now, but something different soon or later, and might need to be revised from time to time. That, I just wanted to kind of set that as a general thought for the manual.
I think it would be helpful to really do some investigative work on the other commissions, and are there reasons why they choose not to have union employees, or something in gaming that, whether it be the licensing process, the background investigation, I'm just not sure. If there is something that a reason to consider not having unions. So
Right.
I don't have that answer, and it would be,
Yeah. And I think we need to talk to the state people as well at HRD to make sure we know what our options are. I don't know what flexibility we have exactly, so let's do both of those things. Let's do
Yeah.
more research on the other state jurisdictions, and but also talk with the local people and see what with the local human relations people, make sure we know what the options are. I can see in an agency like this, you're gonna wanna have a lot of flexibility to eliminate people immediately if there's any hint of a problem, which is kind of counter to the whole point of union protections. On the other hand, we're gonna have state police, they're in unions, so.
when you mention the state police, now in New Jersey, although they were unionized employees, if you choose to take this specialist position and be part of the Casino Gaming Bureau, you do not have your union protection per se.
Oh, really?
Yes, in other words, you can, at any time, if the assignment is not working out, when you take that assignment, you know that you can be moved in a day's notice. So that's part of the special assignment. And there are areas in which our Massachusetts troopers abide by a similar agreement. Overall, they are union employees, but when they take these specialist assignments,
Right, that's right, the colonel was telling us,
Yes.
like, if you're assigned to the AG's office
Yes,
at the IG or
correct.
someplace, you choose to not have certain
Correct.
kinds of protections, yeah. Okay, all right, so we need to do some more this is a big question, I think, and I think it should be clear to everybody that this is a draft, and we are thinking about how this works, and we will do some more research, both locally and nationally, to better inform ourselves for trying to make this policy decision.
Yes, and just for the record, the question I was posing here was whether simply by including the language, we have taken some kind of policy position, intended or not.
Yeah, well, I think we clearly have. I mean, I don't know how you can be a union employee and be an employee at will. This seems, so I don't know enough
With the
about it.
current-
So
yeah, with the current.
okay, we'll check this out. Okay.
Should I just keep
Yeah,
going with
sure.
hiring process? The policy question here is that we currently have drafted in the manual the following language: after background checks are complete, and it's background checks in the plural. The commission, the director, or a designee shall choose whether to make an offer and to which candidate. This is language that I mirrored from the Attorney General's office, and this language suggests that more than one background check will be conducted on more than one candidate. I guess one background check will be conducted on more than one candidate, where it also suggests that the background check may be a deciding factor to offer employment or not. That's counterbalanced to the notion of, could we stipulate or should we stipulate that no offer of employment will be made until a background check has passed?
Another way to phrase that I think makes more sense is it's a conditional offer of employment. And the condition is you have to successfully pass the background. Because that way we know, I mean, a person could apply for a position and then change their mind. And to go through the time and the expense of a background when they're not interested probably doesn't make sense. But this way, you know they're interested, there's a conditional offer of employment. And that way, we know they're interested and we're going to go forth with the background. And that way, that's the term that's used in policing organizations. You have a recruit and they know that they have to pass a background, so it's a conditional offer of employment that you make to that individual. That way there's.
That makes sense to me, what you just got through saying, but it seemed to me we might want to write it in such a way that we have a pretty broad range of flexibility. I mean, there may be reasons, I don't know what it would be, where we might decide we want to do a background check in advance. I think in the scope in the plan, which we don't have to adhere to, but at the moment, the plan for the ED is that we would do background checks on all the finalists in advance of interviewing them and making the decisions. So now, we may not want to do that, but I think it makes sense to be able to do any of those things. We certainly have already said we will not make
An
final
announcement.
offers
No.
or announcements, right. We will make no binding offer on us, and we'll make no announcement until background checks are completed. That's an absolute. But as to when we do the background check and whether we do it on more than one finalist, I think we should leave ourselves the flexibility. So however you have to,
Okay.
write it.
Sure.
To accomplish that. Okay.
But whereas the background check does not make a determination, rather it's a conditional offer of employment.
Well, what I'm saying, we could leave it
We
as.
could do. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we follow the conditional, that's one way, and then
One.
it wouldn't, but I'm saying we should leave it open so that we can use whichever of those approaches we want.
And the way to leave it open would be to say to the candidate, you're a finalist for the position and we'd like to begin a background investigation. I think they have to be notified because there is interaction with that candidate during the background investigation.
And the commission at that point will have the ability to do one at a time or multiple at a time.
Right. Right.
Okay. Following through on 155, the employment of relatives. From what I can gather on other agencies, most Commonwealth agencies do allow for relatives to be employed by different state agencies, and contemplate that some state agencies may be large enough that there will be either, sometimes even family employment within the state agency. In such instances, there's also specific language relative to coworkers who become domestic partners or married, to allow for that. As I currently have it drafted, the current draft is not permissive within the small commission to have employment of relatives, but does recognize that there may be relatives in other state agencies.
Are we sure we want to go down that road and have an absolute that there can't be a relative? I'm thinking of an example like an inspector out at a casino. They're an agent of the commission, and if we had an inspector out at a casino in, say, Western Massachusetts, and then that person may have a brother or a sister that has similar skill sets and would like to make application in a Boston location or the Boston region, are we sure we want to, I mean, I think we have to be very careful about making sure that our selection process is sound, but I don't know that is there a reason that we have to be so absolute about employees?
Well, we're not being absolute. We are, the reason of me bringing this up, I thought, was relevant in the context on the enhanced code of ethics that we have to formulate in the near future, which is not part of this handbook, but whether that at some point will run counter to that code of ethics. I just bringing it out there. If there's no concerns about that, I
Well,
thought it was relevant.
We can change it, if, as you've said, we can change
We can
this,
change
but,
this.
but I'm kind of inclined with Commissioner Cameron. I don't know why, you say in your note here that it's often the case that you prohibit supervisory employee relationships within the
Yes.
family.
Yep.
Yes.
That, I think, makes sense. But I don't see the public interest in this very strict rule of why you couldn't have a relative. You know, it can't be my relative, because then it
Correct.
would be supervisory, but, and it can't be within a department, you know, in a chain of command. But I don't see why we would want to preclude people in this completely strict way.
Okay.
So I would say, until we get to the Ethics Commission, ethics rules, which, as you say, may change things, that 1.5.5 ought to be redrafted to relate only to the supervisory employee relationship, with relative defined in the same way you have it here. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay.
Another, section 2.8, I had drafted initially language relative to sensitive information, but since then, our regulations are very detailed relative to dealing with confidential information. So the point of me bringing this up is I will strike what's currently drafted
Okay.
and refer simply and summarize to our regulations, because they are so much more really detailed and robust.
Okay.
2.9, this is relative to supplemental employment and business activities. Our own statute provides in section 3, subsection O, the requirement to, for all employees and commissioners to request written approval prior to employment elsewhere besides the commission. Now, so that's incorporated. My question here is, do we want to require prior written approval for certain activities which may not be paid? And be more explicit in that regard. Some activities, advocacy, et cetera, also run close to the questions about ethics and other things.
I think this is a good requirement. I think it's very important in certain, there can be conflicts, and to ask in writing if you can do certain things, I think makes a lot of sense. It's very common in, again, public safety positions.
But this, that's only for pay. And this now lets you do nonprofit or not-for-pay things, the way it's written, right?
Yeah, let me.
You define activities that are not supplemental employment or business activity would include unpaid work for civic, scout, religious, et cetera. So,
In the current draft, yes.
in the current draft, right. So the way it's written now, it precludes, you have to get permission to get work for pay, but it does not preclude work for
Unpaid.
nothing.
Unpaid. I'm bringing up the question, should we?
Right.
Just taking the.
That's right.
yeah.
But I thought Commissioner Cameron was approving of the for pay preclusion, but I'm not sure what you were saying relative to the second.
Unpaid.
The part that's on the page 19 of the draft, if you have it there. I can't see any, I don't know, I mean, as long as the advocacy doesn't relate to our work, if the unpaid work doesn't relate to our work, which is dealt with here under section 4, you say any advocacy activity, paid or unpaid, is precluded. This is on page 18. So I don't see why we would want to extend it to unpaid activities.
Well, I'm really taking a page from the statute that seems broad, and which says, no employee of the commission shall pursue any other business or occupation or other gainful employment. Maybe that's the answer, gainful employment, outside of the commission without prior written approval. Do we want to interpret that as meaning only paid activities, or is there any unpaid activities that may fall under this restriction? That was simply the question. I mean, I haven't seen for other agencies this restriction, and that's where it's all.
Have we looked at any other gaming handbooks for a gaming commission?
Not on this issue, no.
I mean, I can't think of a reason, but I just don't know if we're missing something.
Well, if you look at the examples, there are 6 examples here in the present draft of things that are not excluded. In other words, that you can do. Unpaid work for civic, scout, religious, educational, fraternal, social, etc. Serving as a notary public, a JP, justice of the peace. Serving as a trustee, guardian, conservator, executor, administrator for your immediate family. Renting property, although you can't rent to the commission. Personal, professional involvement in the community, like a bar association. Performing minor services and odd jobs for friends. I mean, that's the range of not-for-pay activities that, that makes sense to me. I would say the presumption ought to be to leave it the way it is.
Okay.
Judge McHugh might want to read the statute and make sure that he doesn't find this inconsistent with the statute. But I think he's already seen this anyway, right?
Yeah, he has.
Yeah. So I for the first round at least, I would prefer to leave it this way.
Okay.
The only suggestion I have is on, do you have this?
Yes.
The regs? Yeah, on
Yep.
page 18, on section 4 that you have highlighted in yellow.
Yep.
It says, any advocacy activity paid or unpaid for against the presence of a casino, And I think that should say a gaming facility, because it could, we would apply to a slots parlor too,
Yep.
obviously.
That would be a restricted.
That's something you can't do.
that- Even if it's unpaid.
Right, you can't be a lobbyist for a
Nope.
casino, right, or a slots parlor.
On page 19, with respect to renting property as income, I'd like to potentially, or throw it out there, whether that should not just, obviously, nobody's gonna rent property at the MGC, but I would extend that to include anybody who may or may not have business, who may have business before the MGC.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know, if I have office space, all of a sudden, somebody comes in that's,
Somebody wants to rent my garage for $100,000 a month.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other question I had is number 5, page 19. Obviously, each of us is restricted from participating in state and local political organizations. Question becomes, do we extend that, kind of restriction throughout the organization, or whether that begins to step over the lines of somebody's ability to have freedom of speech?
Are we
We're
precluded?
restricted.
Are we precluded? We can't
Yes.
be involved in
Mhm.
supportive candidates?
Mhm.
We can support candidates, but there was restrictions to us in terms of being an officer within a political party organization.
Yeah.
Fundraisers.
I think that maybe a little clarification of that might be required, but again, we're restricted. Do we extend that restriction to the rest of the organization?
Well, it's a good point.
Again, that might be a question that pops up in another
Yeah.
gaming jurisdictions.
I think your first one is your first point on item 4 is a good one. You know, it's probably precluded some other place. You know, you can't have a business transaction. In fact, it would probably come under the particular matter ethics commission
Yes.
stuff. You know, if you're involved in.
It's a 268A.
Yeah, that would be covered by this.
Yep.
You know, so, in other words, if somebody you wanted to rent your property, and they were involved in this particular matter before.
Disclose it
that-
before,
Yeah,
that's right.
you disclose it and have to get permission depending on which version it was. So I think it's already covered, but having said that, it may not be a bad idea to add that into section 4. Section 5, I don't know, so should our Director of Enforcement and Investigations, Deputy Director of Enforcement Investigations, be able to be involved in the next governor's race?
I think not.
Right now, they can't, a state employee can, right? You can't.
After
you
business
can't-
hours,
you-
yes.
You after business hours, you can't raise money on state property.
For state time.
Right. Yeah, it would, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, why could the Undersecretary of Administration and Finance be involved in the governor's race and not the Deputy Director for Investigations and Enforcement?
Because there may be a particular position with regard to gaming that is either favorable or not favorable with a licensee, something, and the deputy director has direct authority over licensing.
The way I think about it is also getting close to this other notion of the enhanced code of ethics, and I don't know how close, I don't know that we've crossed that line, where that code of ethics stops in the organization. It's clear that's for commissioners.
Oh, it's for the whole commission. Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah, right.
It's also, there's more enhanced.
This is one I'd be interested in hearing Commissioner McHugh's thoughts on, but also I do think you're right, that we can get at this in our, even, we can rethink this. Right, at the moment, all of our employees can participate in state and local politics within whatever the current rules are. That could be readdressed once we do our ethics document, our new ethics rules.
I know that this is an area where there are restrictions with other commissions.
Okay, well, that'd be interesting to find out, too.
I mean, we have restrictions in the statute.
Mhm.
Might be a good opportunity to look at other jurisdictions and see how far down it goes. It may not extend to, the entry-level positions, it might be mid-management.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got some work to do on this one.
Okay. Another one with more research required. Um, Three, four, temporary alternative work schedule. I have included a language relative to options for telecommuting, which has become more and more a convenience. The language includes, or is very specific, that this would be subject to the approval of the executive director. My point in bringing this up is that all the model handbooks were silent on this option.
But it is a practice currently occurring in state government.
Mhm. There's-
So in other words, you're saying if we say nothing on this, then managers will have the ability to manage comp time?
Well, I know, I'm actually before comp time. I'm on the alternative work schedule
Oh, sorry.
on telecommuting.
3.4.
No, okay, yeah.
There's, what I'm familiar with in other handbooks is mostly as a state employee, there's no option of telecommuting. You come in as a way of being
I
the
see,
face,
okay.
the face of
Yeah.
the state service. Given I'm posing the question that perhaps as the business of the commission has to rely more on being, this is especially true of investigative, of the investigative function. If it's at times easier, more convenient, and there's a real business case to have somebody telecommute, that would be the subject of the approval of the executive director ad hoc,
Right.
or, on a case-by-case basis. I'm suggesting we may include flexible language that may allow us to do this.
Well, but you do, you do now do that, right?
Yes,
So
we now do that in the current
It's
draft.
in there, yeah, okay.
That, again, subject to the approval of the executive director.
I'm kind of surprised that
Others haven't
none of
done
the
it.
state policies are showing up with
Because
that
it is,
allowance.
it is a business practice today in
Yeah.
state government, so.
I mean, even the feds do.
I
Yeah.
know.
I don't know why you necessarily need the word temporary in here. Why not just alternate work schedule and telecommuting? If somebody wants to say, every Friday you can work from home, if it works out for the manager, it works out for the employee, it's fine with us.
But I think the temporary work schedule would get to somebody who's caring for,
Well, no, I understand that, but if if you take out the word temporary, temporary is included. But now
That's
we've
true.
limited it to temporary.
that's true.
So I would leave it the way it is, except take the word temporary out in the several places where it shows up.
It's still subject to the approval.
Yes.
Yeah, it's totally approval, still
Yep.
subject to the approval of the manager, the ED in this
Mhm.
case, yeah.
In the same venue, compensatory time, I had drafted from other models, very explicit procedure for compensatory time. And if we were silent on this, we would be giving more flexibility to the manager-employee relationship to allow for, on an ad hoc basis, under circumstances, investigation, whatever it may be, to allow those two parties to figure that out. I'm suggesting if we delete the current language that I had drafted, we would allow that flexibility.
That's an important flexibility.
Well, you definitely want to have it, there's no question about that. The question is whether we need some kind of documentation requirement. Because it can be abused, and it's the kind of thing that, that the press seeing only part of the deal, that somebody's home some afternoon, without there being a backup that says, yeah, he's home that afternoon because he worked all day Sunday. Seems like maybe there ought to be some kind of either approval process. I mean, be very flexible about what you can do in terms of comp time, but, moderately rigorous on having documentation.
And to that end, as I mentioned here, this would be supplemented, either way, it would be supplemented by a detailed procedure of tracking time, which we have started to do a lot more formally, so that the record is there.
Okay.
We will also be moving to this electronic time and attendance system that the state has started to implement with different agencies. We're going to be part of that.
Drop-down menus that can
Yes.
clearly articulate
Yes,
this.
right. Everybody signs into a website, logs in their hours, the time in and out, and the supervisor approves, that's appropriate.
Okay, well, maybe there should be some reference to that, though, here.
Yes.
Maybe they have nothing there. You ought to have this section be there with something that says.
Appropriate documentation.
Yeah, this is acceptable with appropriate documentation, yeah.
Okay. But, so the consensus is to allow for the flexibility, in other words.
Yes.
Allow,
It's particularly important with investigations.
with investigations, yeah, something goes over the weekend.
While you're on this page, Enrique,
Yep.
under travel expenses,
Yes.
3.4.4, says airline reservations are preferably coordinated with the chief of staff. That would be right now, but that won't be right for very long, I don't think. I don't even know why you need that sentence in there at all, but it doesn't really need to say who coordinates the travel. And it doesn't want to be our chief of staff for very long, I
Yep,
don't think.
nope.
Okay.
Relative to expense reimbursement, we are currently silent relative to miles for commuting, which is pretty much the norm with other state agencies. However, we will have sometime different locations throughout the state and different assignments. People may be residing in one area, originally assigned to one, let's say, one jurisdiction, one casino, but later be envisioned to be assigned somewhere else for all kinds of reasons. And whether we want to, in anticipation of that, think about a reimbursement for miles outside of a certain area or radius of the person's residence.
Well, the extreme cases right now are Commissioners Cameron and
Yes.
Stebbins, I mean, who have to incur a tremendous expense. And so is that done? Did you just sort of do an arbitrary standard?
We could come up with a radius under which no reimbursement is, it's understood that that's part of commuting.
Part of the deal, yeah.
Outside of that radius, we could begin to reimburse for the marginal mile after that. That would recognize that there's participation from larger parts of the state, not just.
And the other thing we have not discussed yet is commission vehicles. What assignments would be appropriate to have vehicles, what
That's right.
jobs required them. So that's another whole
That's an
conversation at
exit
some
strategy.
point that
Yeah.
we should have.
A lot of people have said that the chair should have a Maserati.
I bet they have, yeah.
I'd like to see that record.
Well, so we can leave this flexible, I mean, but so that we have the ability to do it. I don't see any reason why, people who are commuting from, way beyond the norm, shouldn't be able to get paid their costs. It shouldn't become a profit center, but it ought to
No,
become.
it's a wear and tear. I mean, it would be done at the rate of the state. The rate, the state
Yes.
stipulates the
Right.
reimbursement rate per mile.
Right.
So,
Right.
that would simply be counting the miles after some threshold.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea to have the flexibility. I think
Yeah.
you're gonna get into a debate is what's that line? What's
Right.
that radius?
Right.
I'm thinking out loud a little bit, but we could figure out the average commute distance in Metro Boston, which is where we're currently located, and, and reimburse beyond that.
Many states will have 30 or 35 miles,
Yeah.
which is, anything over that is reimbursable.
Is reimbursable.
It's fine with me. I mean, I think, if it's, I do think that makes sense, all the way from commissioners on down. So, but, now, is that right? I mean, if you apply for a job, if you apply to become an administrative assistant in Boston, and you live in, East Hampton, and you get the job, should the commission pay your commuting costs?
Well, effectively, if, under this scenario, after some radius, after some distance, the margin, the marginal distance, we would.
Well, I think
I guess
lots
it's-
of people would consider that as part of their hiring process. And the way to do that is when you do have regional offices, you would offer
Yes.
that person employment in the closer office, which in most positions they would prefer.
Yep.
I think that is the extreme case, because then you're
Right.
paying a lot of money, and is that a good business decision?
So you might not hire somebody because they're from East Hampton, as opposed, all other things being equal, you'd hire the close person.
I doubt that the reimbursement mile will be the deciding factor between somebody applying or not, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I think it purely, reimbursing for miles would purely recognize, the idea of having people from throughout the state, because we're a statewide agency. Unlike other statewide agencies that the business they do is different from ours. There's need and this notion that it's important to be close to the licensees eventually and things like that.
I also think for the individual, they're contemplating, okay, I'll get reimbursed, but I'm also challenged by having an hour and 45-minute or 2-hour commute.
No doubt.
They're gonna take that into their own.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
Own decision making.
Okay, well, that's fine with me. I mean, I haven't thought about it a lot, but I think putting something like that in there does make sense.
Vacation and personal time is the next one.
What is it, did you, on the expense reimbursements?
Yep.
Is this $30 a day, does that come from someplace? I mean, because that's not realistic.
These are current, I believe, federal type guidelines that other state agencies adopt. This was from the Attorney General's.
Where's that?
That's page,
The page got lost, it's 3.4 point,
3.4.2.
And-
I'm sorry,
Just
just
above
before 3.42.
right above 3.4 point.
For meals.
Meals expense incurred while engaged in interstate travel be allowed for an amount not to exceed $30 a day.
Is that the state rate? Currently the state rate here?
Yes.
Federal rate
No,
is always higher.
No, it's currently the Attorney General's rates. That's currently what it
Are they
is.
the only ones in the state that utilize that?
I believe so. There must be others that have a stipend like that, or less prescriptive approach subject to.
I mean, it's sort of a reasonableness standard. I mean,
Yes.
this is too low. I mean, if you have 3 meals, you
Yes.
can't do it for $30. And I would sooner see it be
Yeah.
a reasonableness standard.
And many commissions will go with the federal rate, since it is travel out of state and prices are different depending on where you travel.
Okay.
Travel out
I
of
mean,
state, out of the country.
What's wrong with, I'm traveling out of state and I just give you my breakfast, lunch, and
Because
Well, it
without a
tends to be-
standard, some would take that to extreme. I guess we don't want to be reimbursing at the Four Seasons, which the entree might be $75 without a glass of wine.
Goes with the Maserati.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, but a reasonable rate
Yeah.
does make
Right.
sense.
So if you put the word reasonable in there, it means a boss can say to somebody, hey, that's out of line, or I'll pay you this time, but don't do it again, something like that. Okay.
For these, I can check the federal rate, because
Yeah.
you're correct, the federal rate is higher.
Mhm.
But we're not going with a rate, we're just going with reasonable.
With reasonableness?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Transportation, this is the one we were just talking about, right? Under 3.4.2, was that on here?
Which one? 342, yes,
That's where the transportation,
Mhm.
the commute is.
yes.
We don't say, what's our standard about parking?
Standard for parking?
Yeah.
There's no standard for parking.
Well, and we're now paying parking for
Mhm.
some people.
It's quite different, downtown Boston than downtown Springfield, so,
Yeah.
needless to point out.
Well, we need I guess we can either just do it ad hoc, we do it without a policy, or we can say what we're doing, as a practical matter, we're paying parking for people at the director level, I think, now, right? Which,
Yeah, some.
something like that.
For some.
Yeah, for some, right. So what do you think? Do we need a parking policy? Or not?
I don't find the need for that
Okay,
necessarily.
fine.
I think we could, it varies so much among individuals that we could,
It's hard to have a policy.
yeah, make that part of
Yeah. Okay,
each
fine.
individual case.
Fine.
Vacation and personal time, this is only very minor. The current draft, which I don't know if you have, Mr. Chair,
Oh.
reflects the accrual time that's consistent with the state policies, with all the state agencies. Oh, yes, you do have it.
Yeah.
There's the Red Book, I believe, which is part of HRD's policies, allows state agencies and agencies like us, the Commission, to have discretion to award additional years of creditable service based on experience. To senior management, we as part of a package, if you will, and based on their experience, somebody could start accruing at a higher rate than
Yes.
the minimum
That's
here.
critical for us. We will be attracting individuals with extensive experience in gaming from out of state
Mhm.
in a number of our positions, I suspect, and the ability to offer them an executive package is critical.
Mhm. And so we have that authority and discretion. The policy question here is whether to have all commissioners designated at a minimum level of creditable service. It really applies just to ourselves.
Right.
Because we have the discretion to award it on anyone else.
Well, do I read this right, that this means years of service in Massachusetts?
No.
State system?
Nope, not
No, just
necessarily.
anywhere?
No.
Well, don't all of our commissioners already have 20 years of work? Haven't you been
No.
working for 20 years?
feels like it.
You've been working
Feels
for-
like a lot longer.
How many years have you been working?
25.
All right,
Yeah.
see? you-
25? You're accruing at a lower rate than that.
Well, not within the state system. I
Oh.
mean, professionally, I've been
Oh.
working for 20.
Never mind.
Well, so then this is the state system, this 19.5.
That,
No, yes, it is within the state system.
Okay, so-
the point is that we can recognize
Right.
additional years of experience and reflect that.
That was my point. So we've all the commissioners have been working for more than 19.5 years
That's correct.
somewhere.
Yes.
So we should all get the high-end accrual, the 25-day accrual,
Mhm.
annual accrual. That seems clear to me. I mean,
And the ability to recognize experience if someone was, if a commissioner is recruited or recommended in the future who may have come out of the private sector. I think the ability to offer that flexibility is important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
we have that, yeah.
So I will draft to recognize the 19.
Right. If years of service just means years of service, it doesn't say years of service in Massachusetts state government, so maybe it already says what you want it to say.
No, well, maybe it's worded vaguely, but the point is that to give ourselves the flexibility to recognize service elsewhere as, and
Yeah.
reflect that into.
Well, I agree with that. I thought you were talking about the issue of the commissioners themselves.
Yes.
And that, I think the commissioners already qualify for
Okay.
25.
Right. Last
So
couple of things.
just think 1 second. So that's, okay, yeah, that's 5 weeks. So 25 days is 5 business weeks, which is getting up there for
Yeah.
senior people.
It's the
Yeah.
top end
Yeah, okay.
of state government.
Right. Okay.
Communications and outreach, information technology resource policy. This policy was already adopted in a prior meeting. I'm just bringing up the point that currently, we don't have a network administrator, and the way this is currently written puts a little bit of the onus on the individual to ensure that there's appropriate malware detection software and things like that, where that may not necessarily, that sometimes may confuse people. They may not know whether something is working or not, behind their computer, if you will. This was just questions brought up by Commissioner McHugh relative to the current language. I can reference it.
We hope to hire someone within a year, correct? So
Yes.
maybe a non-issue?
It may not be, it's not a permanent issue. There's language here that precludes or really warns, if you will, employees not to download software unless they know that there's appropriate detection, malware detection software working. And the question comes up, well, how does anybody know when you click update that there's appropriate?
So what are you
software?
recommending that we do here?
Well, I just wanted to call your attention to the current language, which comes from one of the model manuals. I could make more broad to say that employees should seek to inform themselves relative to problems with their computer and ask when necessary. But the onus may not be necessarily on them to make sure that there's the appropriate detection software working.
Fine. Go for it.
And this is only 6.4, speaking engagements. I will just redraft a little bit this section because it was drafted prior to a recent discussion relative to the Speakers Bureau. So I will incorporate comments and language from that memorandum to reflect that.
Well, this is great. Do we have other, Commissioner Stebbins, do you have other issues you wanted to raise?
No.
Okay.
At this time.
Commissioner Cameron, did you have any?
Did you not?
I thought that there ought to be some kind of a introduction or somewhere, maybe it's in the welcome or maybe it's in the preface, there ought to be something that talks about the nature of, just hortatory language that talks about the nature of our work, you know, that this is particularly, you know, the integrity of our behavior and our performance is particularly important, something like that. Talking about appearances, I mean, just some kind of soft language that sort of makes those points, you know, that talks about the need for integrity and the appearance of integrity in this system.
Okay.
Want to include some type of letter from the chairman?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be fine. Doesn't have to come from me, but from somebody that says that kind of thing. I'm just curious why it says, on page 3, under the preface, it says, "The handbook is not to be distributed outside the Gaming Commission unless requested in writing under the Mass Public Records Law." Just, why is that?
Leftover language from some of the model.
Yeah, it seems like one of those things that just gets passed along and,
We
Yeah.
can
Okay.
anybody's welcome.
yeah. I mean, it's on our web, it's already, you know, all over the place. On page 9, it says on 1.5.2, all persons expressing interest in employment with the commission will, without exception, be directed to the Human Resources Department. We don't have one
Which
yet,
is-
for
yeah.
one thing, but
Yep.
we probably will get one someday, although it may not be for a while. So this, but also, again, do we really mean that? You know, if the, and I don't know whether we do or not, but if the deputy director for IEB is hiring personnel for different locations, you know, to sit at different locations, are we making the decision today to standardize all hiring through our Human Resources Department?
Well, there's a hiring policy piece to these where the HR function will serve as a repository, an initial screener, but there will
Right.
be a hiring manager, and that
Right, okay.
that hiring manager is really any department head, any director, anybody who's been designated that position.
Right.
So rather than having multiple repositories.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
The idea of centralizing
Right.
in an HR function,
Yep,
I
okay.
believe is worthy.
That makes sense. I agree with
Me
that.
too.
Yeah. Did Commissioner McHugh read this?
Yes.
Okay, because he and I served on the hiring, and want to make sure that we're conforming with our own regulations, our own proposals for the
Yep.
court system.
He-
Okay.
He did have
Okay. Okay,
important edits.
okay. On page 11, 1.6 background checks, it refers to, oh, well, all right, this says, "and may include providing accurate information necessary to conduct a background check as a condition of employment, and may include fingerprints, urine samples, and detailed testing." You might just want to say drug testing, because, you know, at the moment, we use urine samples, right? But
Yeah,
that
a
could
drug
change.
screen is probably the appropriate
Okay.
term, a drug screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Under the dress code, we've got, quote, "business," close quote, "standard of dress." I don't really know what that is, but I guess that's fine, you know, lets us define it. Okay, fine. This is tiny, under 2.2. See that paragraph? Bottom right-hand corner, it says MTC, you mean MGC, I think.
Yes.
It's nothing. Okay, I guess, page 3, well, it's the next page 3, section 2.3, drug and alcohol policy. I guess we don't need to re-talk about our drug screening, because we've already talked about that, okay. 2.5, freedom from unlawful harassment and discrimination. Support of equal employment includes the recognition that all employees have the right to work in an environment free of unlawful harassment on account of race, color, blah, 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 age, parents, 40 and above. Where does that come from? What if-
I believe Commissioner McHugh might have the background on this, but that may have been some kind of case law. These,
Well, you could be discriminated against because you're too young, for one thing, you know. I'm sorry, you're great, but you look like a kid, we just can't hire you. That's against the law.
Yeah, I don't see a need to have a specific in there
Okay,
like
yeah.
that.
all right, good, you could strike that.
Let's see, well, it's section, what, 2.7.1, it's page 9 of that section. Acting for others, former state employee, do you see that? It's page 9.
Yes.
A former state employee may not ever represent or receive compensation from anyone other than the state in connection of the particular matter that is integrally related to a particular matter in which he participated as a state employee, and in which the state has a direct and substantial interest.
Yep.
So 10 years from now, I couldn't go to work for anybody who's gonna hire me when I'm 108, but I couldn't go to work for somebody we picked
No.
10 years
No,
earlier.
this comes from the Ethics Commission. It's in a matter, let's say, I like to think about an example of my previous work. In my previous work, I helped develop a system that was, a mechanism to allow for reimbursement. This was a computer system. I am precluded from ever working on anybody who would have to have a matter relative to that system that was developed on behalf of the state.
So give me an example in our, don't talk about a commissioner, talk about, one of our investigators. What's an example of what, that investor retires from state service, leaves state service, that person may not do what forever?
If it's something that was developed, and something is very broad here, but the best example that I can think of is, imagine a software system that the commission contracts
Yeah,
contractors
okay.
to help develop,
Right.
and there's a lot of intellectual property, if you will, that goes with developing a software system. That a person, an employee here, years from now, cannot come and help or help modify that very system that was developed on behalf of the state.
Why is that?
That's a preclusion from the state ethics law.
Okay, well, I need to understand that one. That would say that Eileen Glovsky, if she helps us, we acquire our data management system from company X. 10 years from now, she couldn't work for company X. That just doesn't make any sense. Or
Not
couldn't
to the
work
state,
on-
not for the state. She couldn't work for company X servicing the Commonwealth.
Right.
Because she had a direct interest
Right.
in that.
Right, I know.
So she could work for the company in another capacity,
Yeah.
but the state couldn't be her client.
That's right.
Is this language just lifted straight out of someplace else?
Yes.
Out of what?
Um,
The ethics rules?
Ethics rules, yeah.
Really? Huh.
But specifically from the Attorney General's.
Okay.
I believe.
All right, I'd like to look at that, because that's, I don't quite get that, but that's fine. Section is that 2.7.1?
And, you know, the qualifying language here is this matter that is integrally related to a particular matter in which the person participated directly.
So in more generic terms, if someone is sitting in a state agency and I'm reviewing bids for a type of software system and I select somebody, I can't then go out back to that employer and work on that bid back before the state.
That's right. That's an obvious one.
Well, that's
I could
clear.
go still work for that company, but on that matter, which I had a
Mhm.
decision role
A
from the
decision
state,
role.
I can't then be on the other side of the table, essentially.
Okay, in a particular, so can't receive compensation, so I guess, so this means that you couldn't work on a procurement and then 10 years later get paid for that procurement. That's what it says, right? You can't ever represent or receive, anyway, look, let's not take
Must
more
have
time.
happened somewhere.
Well, I'm sure it comes from the recent, you know, the DeMacy, you know, the whatever that.
Cognos.
Cognos case, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, but I'll look into that, and
At least
if I have a
I've
problem,
before.
I'll say so. So we've already, talked about a person can have a second job, they just have to have permission to have it, right? So that's taken care of. And you'll pick this up, but on 3.3, you see that?
Mhm.
There's just, you can see where hours of operation and work schedule slipped in there, where it doesn't belong.
Yes.
But then, the bottom sentence there, it says, a normal workday at MGC is 9, parents 8.25 hours.
It includes 45 minutes for lunch within a seven and a half hour workday. So,
Well, but it shouldn't, doesn't it mean,
the difference between 7.5 hours of work time and 8.25 are 45 minutes for lunch.
just read that sentence, does that make sense to you? Read it.
Which one?
slowly. That last sentence, a normal workday at MGC.
Oh, the 9 is a typo. Sorry.
Okay. There's something wrong with that sentence.
Yes. Yeah, a normal workday at MGC is 8.25, in parentheses, 8.25 hours.
Okay. Including,
Including the 45 minutes of unpaid.
including,
lunch.
so the word 9 and the word 1 shouldn't be there.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about this, but again, tell our audience we can't talk to one another, so we have to do this. I couldn't go talk to a Commissioner Zuniga and go over these with him because that would be a violation of our open meeting law. So I apologize for the delays here. Under 5.9, FMLA,
Yep.
there's 2 or 3 pages in, 2 pages in, it says certification of a serious health condition.
Which,
No, it I think it's on the next page. See the heading, certification of serious health condition?
Yes,
And there was a note that somebody put in here,
Mhm.
Eileen, I guess?
yes.
And did we resolve that question? I'm not sure I like this whole part. My view, it is not the commission's responsibility to verify that someone can take FMLA.
Yes,
See.
it's the employees and the doctor's job to do that, which this edit,
So you
I believe
would accommodate
suffices,
that?
yes.
Okay, I couldn't quite follow. Okay, good.
So it now says employees must provide adequate and sufficient documentation,
Right,
as opposed to the other way around.
okay. So that gets it on the
That
next.
gets it all done,
On
yeah.
the next page too,
Mhm.
okay, great. Yeah, okay. So you've added on the information technology resources policy,
Mhm.
you've added in that word impermissibly, which seems to solve the problems that were raised, okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's reminded. Great, nice job. So we've got a few places to do a little more
Couple of edits.
research, and, but we're getting close. Great. Okay, project management consultant. Back to Commissioner Zuniga.
There is really no update from last week. There's a meeting, and I did mention this last week, I believe, a meeting on August 22nd.
Next Wednesday,
With,
right.
next Wednesday, among our two sets of consultants to look at timeline assumptions and start thinking about some of the scenarios that we need to contemplate relative to phase two. But that meeting will be forthcoming.
Great. Racing Division, Commissioner Cameron?
Yes, a short report today, Mr. Chair. As we spoke about last week, we have finalized our job description and have posted for a racing director, and we've posted on our website, the HRD state website, the Association of Racing Commissioners International, Racing Officials Accreditation Program website, Blood Horse Magazine and website, and Hoofbeats Magazine and website.
All right.
So I think anyone interested in racing will be able to ascertain that we are soliciting for a director's position, and we look forward to some strong applications.
How long do we post?
Well, I
Is that
have not, we have not made that final decision. I was, with all my patience, was thinking a couple of weeks would be sufficient, but maybe we'll put it out there another week or so.
When did it
maybe.
go, when did it go up?
It went up the end of last week.
The end of last week, so we're in our first week this week.
We are in our first week,
Okay.
yes.
So, maybe run it to the end of the month.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. That makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay. And the process is gonna be what?
Well, I'm gonna determine, based on how much interest there is, whether or not I need to use our search firm for help with resumes. Again, it's unknown to me. I don't believe we'll have.
A lot of credible candidates,
Yes,
yeah, right.
yes, so it
Right.
may be a process, and I will be conducting interviews with someone else.
Okay.
And hopefully bringing a couple of strong candidates before the full commission.
So we're basically doing the, this
We are
the
doing
same.
the screening.
Same way as the ED. We've selected one
Yeah, other
commissioner
than
to
the.
take the ball.
Correct,
And
we
then-
are.
And if you feel the need to involve either other commissioners or the search firm or somebody else, you'll take the initiative to make
Correct,
that happen.
yes.
Okay. And we'll close it down the end of this month.
Yes. that completes my racing division report for this week.
And we're going on our first field trip.
We are.
You're
This
gonna show us
Thursday,
around.
we have, I have hearings in the morning, and the afternoon, we do have the
And you're
couple of
you're
tracks.
prepared to take us around and
Yes.
show us what's happening.
Yes, I am.
Great.
You'll be impressed.
Okay. Project work plan, consultant status report. I think we told the consultants that we didn't really need to have them come in today. Do you want to just give a sort of a rundown on what we talked about with the
Sure.
consultants earlier today?
Sure. There's, let me just summarize the way the RFR was initially conducted, allowed us, which we have the intention to do, to extend the contract for consulting services for months beyond the upcoming September, end of September, end of contract. So we have been talking about just what the scope of services may be relative to that subsequent phase. And we're starting to think about the need to do that, much of which will be informed on the basis of the strategic plan that is also forthcoming. There's, is that
Yeah.
a summary? There are some deliverables that were originally scheduled in this week, last week, that slipped a little bit, given a lot of recent focus in the promulgation of the regulations. So those deliverables are still in the short term. They will be forthcoming, and they're working hard and extra hours to present them to us in the next couple of weeks. One of them notably is this timeline that I was just giving an update on relative to how we incorporate that with the effort of our project management consultants, PMA. But others are also forthcoming. Table of organization is another one, and I don't have it here with me,
Yeah.
but there's a couple that are really in the near term.
Right. Well, and I think this is, again, something that we weren't able to talk about until we had a full meeting, and I wish Commissioner McHugh were here, but as I sort of said in an email, we think we sort of got off track in making sure that we were relating through Kathy O'Toole. You know, she is the project manager for the consultant, and she's there for a reason. She's got the right kind of skills that we wanted, and we need to use her as the point person on everything we're doing, you know, not absurdly, but in general, because she and Kristen that she works with are really good at keeping people on track, including keeping her team on track. So we met with her today to sort of reestablish that. She'll be the point person for negotiating, she'll be the central point of contract for negotiating the extension, and for fine tuning. You know, the original scope that we put in the first contract has been modified as we've gone along. We keep coming up with new stuff, and then we ended up putting a full bore on the first level of regs, first set of regs. And so it's been kind of loosey-goosey. I think it's been good loosey-goosey. They've been very flexible in responding to us, and I think we've gotten our money's worth. It has extended the timeline a little bit, but they're not looking for any more money. They're willing to do it all and take a little bit longer to do it. So, and then there still remains, at least in my mind, it still remains a little bit fuzzy exactly what work product will we have at the end of the current contract in order that we can issue, we know we're gonna have a strategic plan, but we need to issue the RFA as soon as the regs are approved by the Secretary of State. And we talked at this meeting with Kathy O'Toole, and we're not exactly sure whether we need other materials from the consultant to help us get that RFA together, because that has to be ready to go October 17th. So we're gonna talk with them about that too. So I think I think they've done a great job. I feel really good about it. I think they've given us plenty of value for our money, but I think we need to be a little bit more tight in the way we manage the relationship and just think through the interaction. And we'll bring Commissioner McHugh in on that conversation too, so that next time around, the second phase of the relationship with the consultant, we all have a clearer sense of kind of what's going on and when are policy decisions getting made and how do we all get involved in those and so on and so forth. Okay, but it was a good conversation.
I would also just append to that, from the commission, an important point of contact for this coordinating piece that Kathy really brings important relevance to will be Director Glovsky.
Yeah, good point.
Which
Yeah.
has now been
Right.
formalized and
That's good.
understood a little
Yeah.
bit better.
Thank you for mentioning that, yeah.
Because Commissioner McHugh was, and the chairman were playing different roles at different times.
Right.
And this, we all believe, consolidates that.
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's glad to add that. And that'll make our life easier too, when it's not a commissioner who's doing the conversations, who can't talk to any other commissioners. It'll be, phasing Eileen in as quickly as we can. Yeah, okay, good. Technical and other assistance to community ombudsman search update.
Sure.
Commissioner Stebbins.
We have finalized the list of folks we're going to interview. We have some of those interviews starting tomorrow, and hopefully we can narrow it down to some finalists to present to you to meet with, hopefully in the next week or two.
So you've got, how many people are you gonna interview? You said like 15, you said something
I
like
think
that.
we're roughly around, 15 folks.
Okay.
And we will narrow that down. Some candidates, since it's a new position for a new agency, I think there are some people that we want to meet with who may not be an exact fit, but I think had a background that we'd like to hear them explain what that fit is.
Good.
Or, they're people who we, could be in position to hire for another position down the line.
Great. Next Tuesday, Commissioner Zuniga and I will be away, but the meeting after that, I would definitely like to be involved in the ombudsman interviews, the final round of interviews.
Mhm.
But if the week after that, you were all teed up, ready to go to finalists, that'd be great. So that would give you the balance of this week and next week.
Okay.
We can probably make that. If it's longer than that, fine, that's what it takes, but, okay, good. So that would be the 20, if we have a meeting on the 29th, right, 28th, yeah. So just as a straw man anyway, so that's what we'll have to do. We'll interview finalists as a group at our open meeting? Is that the process?
We can do that. We haven't done that with any other position.
Well, other than the consultants, right?
Other than the consultants.
Oh, so
But the, process would be, similar to how we see us conducting the AD search, is that we will put finalists through the full background check before we present them in public. Whereas if it's just you that wants to interview the finalists, then we can put, that one key candidate through the background check. But, it's narrowing down this list to, anywhere from 3 to 5 finalists that, we would submit to you to interview.
Okay. So we'll sort of see how that plays out, how many you've got, how strongly you feel. If you rank ordered one way above everybody else, then we might just talk about that person and just go with that person. But if you've got a bunch that are sort of in the same position, then we might have a different process.
Right.
Yeah.
And we still got to get them through a background check.
Right, okay. So we'll aim for, try to have the finalists, however many that is, teed up by the 28th. 6, finance budget.
There is a brief update. We've received 2 applicants, or the checks for 2 applicants, and deposited them.
Thank you all very much.
Deposited them in our new bank account. And we've been going through some setup procedures for that bank account, coding, so that we can segregate appropriately the costs and revenues that will be have to be accounted for. And that's essentially what we've done in the last week.
Great. Item 7, public information, public education and information, community and/or developer outreach responses to requests for information. Although I forgot to reiterate this at our meeting in Springfield, I am serving as the interim ombudsman, in effect, for developers or communities who need some particular kind of attention. And I have gotten a call from one developer whose money is in, to say that they want to meet with the Department of Transportation. And we actually are a little bit behind the 8 ball because we haven't got the designated contacts in all the agencies. They're supposed to set up each of them is supposed to have a single point of contact too, to help developers deal with this stuff. So I'll follow through on that quickly.
Yeah, at the end of the forum last week, we had a number of questions put into our question box from the community. At this stage, looks like they might be an impacted surrounding community. Listed about 7 or 8 questions for us to address, and went to that individual and suggest they come in and speak with 2 of us, either you
Okay,
and
good.
Commissioner McHugh, or however you want to work it. But if
Yeah,
you're the temporary ombudsman, then
Yeah.
perhaps a meeting with yourself. and
yeah, maybe they should
Commissioner McHugh.
contact, will you tell them? They should contact me maybe, and I'll set that up with whoever.
Yep.
What else was I going to say about this? Oh, Brandon, or somebody, or Heather, sent around a note about some inquiries that hadn't been answered yet. There were like 8 or 9 of them. I did look at that quickly, but don't let it slide. Keep honest. We've got to figure, I forget what they are. We need to talk about it here, but some of them were dated July. And did they all get at least an acknowledgement that we've received your email, we'll be back to you?
No.
Well, they should definitely get that
Okay.
right now. And when they all come in, I thought that was standard process, that you sort of, I thought there was some immediate kind of bounce back response that said, we've got your thing, we'll be in touch with
There's
you.
an on-screen message saying, we'll get back to you as soon as we have, as soon as they submit it.
So these people have gotten,
An acknowledgement that we've received it.
so they have gotten that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, just keep bugging us, bug me if you have to, whoever you have to, but I don't want to let those sit. None of them are all that big a deal, but still, just as a matter of courtesy, I want to make sure we get back to them, so stick with us on that. Report from the Director of Communications and Outreach, that would be Director Driscoll. We slipped and we forgot to put Director Glovsky on the agenda, but we'll get her next week.
All right, so I think for the most part, everybody knows what I'm continuing to work on. So we're in the process now of answering we're in the Q&A period for the RFR, for the logo and website. I've been working with Eileen on that. That will conclude on Friday, and then I believe that they have approximately 2 weeks to respond at that point. So we'll still be on track to make a decision on September 4th. And in the meantime, I was talking to Brandon about this as well. We'll start building out the site map for the new website so that when the designers and developer does come on board, for the most part, content will be ready to go, which will absolutely expedite the process, because my goal is to see this complete by the time we officially issue the regs in mid-October. I want to have the site up and ready to go and have the visibility there by that point. Again, so many requests keep coming in for the Speakers Bureau, which is terrific. And so we're just in the process now of coordinating those, making sure that we have the dates down and who is going to be the speaker at these down. And then also some ask if we want presentation materials, and some request that we don't, that we simply just give a verbal presentation. But I know, Commissioner Stebbins, that you have one coming up on September 7th that we'll need to work on, because they did ask if you want to give a presentation, so that might be one that we consider doing the PowerPoint for that's complete. So, whereas you, Chairman Crosby, you have one on, I believe, September 6th in Worcester, that they requested that you don't do that.
Right.
So it's just a matter of just determining that, because I think we have about close to 10 over the next 2 months, which is good, but it's busy.
Right.
And that's really my main stuff right now.
May just sent you the contact on the ethnic media
Yes.
thing, so we follow up on that.
I will take care of
And also,
that.
we had talked about, and maybe now, after our meeting, whether it's tomorrow morning or Thursday, other editorial boards. Now, I think we got a lot to talk about, same.
Sure.
So I'd like to start getting those scheduled too.
Okay.
Particularly the ones that are most active, the Springfield paper and the Southeastern Mass and so forth.
Yeah, we can, we'll talk about that.
Okay,
Okay.
great, thank you. Discussion of Western Mass Forum, any more follow-up other than the RPA question?
Yeah, and just simply as a general follow-up, I sent notes and thank yous out to our panelists, to the folks at Western New England University, Senator Banderas, and some of our other speakers for helping us host the forum. There's a few follow-up items and potential topics that we may address at one of our future business meetings. But I saw the note from MAPC right after the meeting. Actually, yesterday I left a note for Tim Brennan, who is kind of our co-host, who's with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, asking him to share with us whatever agreement paperwork that they show they have a relationship with the folks at the Mass Environmental Policy Act, because I think that was the relationship they spoke about, whereby MEPA comes back out to a regional planning agency and asks for their input, feedback on a MEPA application. So hopefully Tim will share that information with us, or the folks at MAPC, but I think it's a good conversation to initiate with the planning agencies, because I think we all agree that community mitigation, that surrounding impacted community designation is going to be one of the biggest question marks for us, depending on where the applications come from.
Do we want to do anything more? I mean, this inquiry from MAPC says, do we want to come in and, do you want us to come in with other, either to meet with individuals or meet with the commission, or to meet with MAPC, or to meet with other RPAs?
I think it'd be helpful to invite all the RPAs to come in. Just say, again, the example they gave us out in Western Mass was their role with a MEPA application. I think it would be helpful to have some brainstorming around how they may be able to assist us in how do we formalize that relationship, how do we formalize that, obviously, in advance of the RFA 2 discussion. But I think it'd be helpful to have them all come in and figure out, kind of brainstorm how we can make that relationship happen. I think they're going to be helpful to the process.
Now that I think about it, we talked about this in another context, maybe it makes more sense to do that after we get our ombudsman, because our ombudsman's going to be the point of contact, and they don't have to have a public meeting. The ombudsman could meet with them first, and if he felt there was a need to involve us, we could. So maybe, does that make sense to you?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that does too. So I can get back to, or maybe you can, Janice, this email was to you from Charlie. Just tell him that we do want to do that, but we're going to wait until the ombudsman.
If I may just reiterate, a number of good thoughts after the latest public educational forum. One comment really resonated with me, and it was from Mr. Brennan, relative to finding ways to incentivize good behavior at the local negotiation/mitigation process that is about to take place. I think they are in a unique, they come from a unique place or a perspective, one of having done this process at a regional basis, for a number of years. So I really look forward to them coming to a commission meeting to have thoughtful brainstorming. But I do agree that since we're so close to hopefully hiring someone
Right.
in that role, that person could also benefit
Yeah.
from that.
Right, I think that's right. I'd like to have a brief adjournment, and we'll be right back.
Sure.
Reconvene, thank you. Discussion of diversity inclusion forum. Yeah,
Can I go back?
sorry.
Let me just go
Yep.
back to the Western Mass Forum. There
Yep.
was another issue that came out that I neglected to mention. And again, it's a question I think we're going to need to deal with in the RF2 process, and that was during the tourism conversation and the regional tourism board talking about, again, coming to some agreement with a casino operator on an MOA. And I think it behooves us as we look at the RFA2 process, how do we instill some type of teeth for those MOA agreements? We don't want an operator to sign what they need to sign to make everybody in the community feel good, and then, feel they can walk away from whatever that agreement is. Understanding it's not really part of the host community agreement, but somewhere in there, I think the message was heard loud and clear that we should try to find a method of giving some teeth to those types of agreements. It may pop up, with respect to workforce development, job training. I mean, we're really looking to an applicant to tell us how they're gonna have a positive impact on the community. That may find itself in our application through any variety of means. MOA might be one of them. But how do we give that teeth if it is a qualifier for their final license application? That was the other point.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was one of many things that came out of there, and as well as, what do we want to have in the MOA? What kinds of cross-marketing, whatever the whole range of stuff is that we're gonna think about, that was very useful. Okay, 7D is the Diversity and Inclusion Forum, which we have decided to go ahead with. I think it's scheduled for the 17th, September 17th. They are working together to pull together a rough draft, which we'll look at in a few days, a week or so. But Commissioner Stebbins suggested, and I think this is a good suggestion, that somehow we get a link between folks that are going to be interested in this and the workforce development people, right? That's what you were suggesting. How would we do that exactly? Who would get in touch with who?
I've been kind of toying, we know that the community colleges have been spearheading the workforce development piece. And they have begun to organize themselves, the providers, stakeholders, regionally based within the 3 casino regions. I'm actually going to a meeting that the Southeast region is having down in Brockton in a couple of weeks. It may make sense to partner them up and make them part of those regional alliances that are in the early stages.
Is that a
of
community college
organization.
alliance, the one you're seeing in southeastern Mass?
It's going to be at the community college in Brockton. I think it's
Massasoit.
Massasoit Community College.
But is it
They're
public?
Yes.
they're hosting
Yes.
the next meeting as part of these regional alliances that the community colleges are helping organize, which I'm assuming, I've been to one of their meetings, will also include the career centers, the regional employment boards. I think it makes sense to try to integrate some of the
Yeah.
equal opportunity and workforce opportunity folks into those conversations.
Yep. Okay.
So, Bill Messner from HCC has been kind of a point person on this. He might be able to
Yeah.
help steer somebody in the right direction in terms of what regional group they may want to consider participating in, but I would hope they'd want to be involved in
All three of them, yeah,
all
I
3
think so,
regional
yeah.
alliances.
Okay, great, good point. Research agenda, we are working on the RFI. I did have a meeting to tell people what our research agenda is, what we're looking for, and to get expressions of interest in how they would approach it. And we'll get that out hopefully in the next week or so. I did meet with the folks from the Harvard School of Public Health last week, or yesterday, who, they're particularly focused on the addiction side, on the gambling, compulsive gambling side, but are interested in being involved, and whether they will want to collaborate with others or participate on their own, I don't know. But, you know, they're anxious to be involved, and they, like others, have reacted very favorably to our idea of having this be a really big, comprehensive, longitudinal study of the socioeconomic impacts of gambling, because they agree with everybody else that nothing really, really good has ever been done in the way that we could do it here, so that was good. And as I think I've said, I am meeting with Secretary Bigby and Public Health Commissioner John Auerbach, just to get them involved in this process, both in research design, as well as making sure that they're on our team for purposes of paying for this thing and so forth. I think you're coming to that meeting, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
right, good.
It's not next week,
No,
correct?
no.
It would be
Right.
afterwards.
I think that's it on the research
Yep.
agenda.
You should see a draft of the RFI, within the next couple of days.
Okay, great, terrific. If by any chance I could take it with me, I won't be here on Friday, so if you happen to get it to me before the end of the day Thursday, that'd be great, but
Yep.
doesn't matter.
We've also gotten some good, I know you had produced a draft of some of the bare bones research categories. Some of those we shared back to some folks from the Worcester panel. They provided some feedback, at least on the economic factors.
Right.
I've sent that list also over to Secretary Goldstein, Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development, again, to look at the economic side, as well as hopefully give us some idea of, what information may already be there that we don't have to go out and hunt for. But,
Right. Good.
We've gotten some good feedback in the categories and some of the nuances.
You've sent that to me, right? That feedback?
I think so. I'll double check.
You sent me one, I think. I don't know if I've had any more than that. That was a while back, but,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, good. Application process. This is an important one. At the end of was it our last meeting? No, maybe before that. I forget which, well, I think it was the minutes we just approved. We talked about the fact that we weren't sure what we were gonna do. Yeah. It was decided to leave the word "will" in the document and have a future discussion about issuing an RFA or accepting application fees from developers proposing a project in Region C. And we want to talk about that some more. I know Commissioner Cameron has a view on this. Do you want to put it on the table?
Yes, I think we had some general discussion about whether or not we ask applicants which region they're interested in. And the point or the important piece here that I think we need to consider is frankly that we do not, the law does not call for a commercial license in Region C. So I think it's important that we do not accept application fees, nor do we accept applications from anyone interested in Region C, southeastern Massachusetts.
For a casino license.
For a casino license. Obviously, a slot parlor, we're open to anywhere in the state, but a full-blown casino, the law does not call for that, and I think it's important that we do not accept. I think it sends the wrong message that, anything that may happen in the future, any changes, but as of right now, the law does not call for that. It is a compact was just signed with the tribe, and I think it's important that we honor and we respect the law and do not entertain any kind of an investigation for anyone in southeastern Mass who may end up submitting an application. I don't think we accept that. I think that's important that we abide by the law. So that was a point I made after that conversation we had last week about should we ask, those kinds of general conversations.
Commissioner McHugh did ask me to have represent his views. Basically, he agrees on this point, and that we should not, and we should be clear that we will not accept application fees, or applications for that matter, from people whose intent is to do business as a casino operator in Region C. His thought is that there is a reason to leave, to not specify the region, to not require people to specify the region. Because there is some people who might want both, there is some people who may not want their intentions known just yet. Although, the only reason you would put your $400,000 in now is because you're ready to go start, talk to state agencies. That's the only reason, unless you just want to announce your intention, which it's a pretty expensive way to announce your intention. You can't talk to state agencies other than that one introductory meeting without putting your $400,000 down. So it's hard to believe anybody's gonna do it without then wanting to talk to state agencies, so it'll sort of edit itself. But he did feel strongly that we should announce and have it on the website that we will not accept applications or application fees for anybody interested in a casino license in Region C.
Can I, just by way of clarification, at least not now, correct? Because
Yeah.
the law does contemplate that if this commission determines that the tribe may not be able to obtain land into trust, that then,
Right.
after that determination is made, somewhere in the future, this commission could then select, or not select, but request, or open up for a commercial license.
If that were to
If that
ever
were.
happen, then, of course, at that point, we'd solicit applications from that region.
region.
But an investigation done now means nothing years from now, frankly. And it
Well, we
it
definitely
sends-
wouldn't do an
It
investigation.
sends the
I mean,
wrong message, well, even to accept money sends the wrong message
Well,
that.
we're not gonna, yeah, right.
Correct.
You're not disagreeing, right? You're not.
No, I'm just clarifying that, the
It
law
might
does
change.
stipulate it
It
might
might-
change.
yeah, it might change.
There's a moving piece in the future,
Right.
potentially, or
But
not.
part of the point that Commissioner Cameron was making is, we don't want to even imply, even if we were to say, at this time, we will not accept applications, which is true, but that kind of implies that we're waiting for something to change, so, and at the moment, the die is cast. At the moment, the tribe is in the position to do what it has the right to do. If it gets the approval now or later of the compact, and then is in the land and trust process, there will not be any commercial license, period. If something changes, something changes. And I think that's a fair point. We don't want to sort of pull our punch a little bit, or telegraph some kind of an expectation. So I think we should put on the website, Elaine and Brandon, we should put somewhere on the application area very clearly and that we will not accept applications for casino licenses in Region C. Or we're only accepting applications for Regions A and B.
Yes, I'm actually not sure, I don't really understand the point why we're not asking which region. Even if someone were to say A or B, that's fine, but I don't understand leaving it blank. Just,
In other words, allowing people to not select a region, if
correct.
you will.
If someone wants to say A or B, that would be fine, but I don't understand why we have a block that, would say you don't have to select a region.
I think it's very marginal either way. I mean, I don't think it makes very much difference either way. Commissioner McHugh felt that there is still some plausible uncertainty, possibly even strategy on the part. For example, there might be a bidder in Western Mass now who, because of all the competition, is rethinking they might want to play in Eastern Mass.
So if you
But
said
they
A
don't-
or B, how is that different?
Well, they're now saying A or B.
Right, so
That tells.
why give an option of leaving it blank?
Because you don't force somebody who might be rethinking their strategy to reveal that they're rethinking their strategy.
But if you say A or B, how is that different?
Well, if a vendor who is now identified totally in Western Mass puts in his application fee and says A or B, everybody's gonna look at that and say, they're thinking about B2. Like I said, I think it's pretty minor, but I don't think we gain anything by adding it either. I don't think there's much loss, I don't think there's much gain, I think it's kind of like 50-50.
I guess I'm just, again, concerned about Region C.
Yeah, but if anybody, I mean, if they apply to Region C, if somebody applies for Region C,
But if they leave it blank and then.
if they leave it blank and their intention is to do Region C secretly, there's two things that can happen. One is they can sit there secretly with us holding their 400,000. They don't ever get the chance of getting their money back because they haven't identified which region they're getting. They're secretly sitting there quietly doing nothing. If it's somebody that we know is interested in Region C, then we call them up and we say, we can't take this. If it's somebody that we don't know that secretly wants to do Region C, if they call us up to say, okay, we've given you our money, we're gonna talk to state agencies, we say, oh no, we're gonna give you your money back because we're not doing that.
But we've already said it's non-refundable. So
Unless we
I-
don't do an RFP. It's refundable if you don't do an RFP.
Yeah, that was part of the form.
Actually, does anybody here have an opinion one way or the other? I think it's in the margins on either side, but some of you may represent proposers, just out of curiosity. Does anybody have an opinion one way or the other? Yeah.
I think it's okay to kind of clarify a region. I mean, that tells us what specific communities they're looking at, whether they put down A and B, or just A, or just B. We've decided now we're excluding them from Region C because it doesn't make sense to get them started in a process that we don't know where to end.
I think that what precludes is someone doing what the chair just mentioned. If we say A, B, or A and B, and then tell us which, then there is no issue around someone trying to leave it blank and give us some money when their intention is C. I think we preclude that from happening altogether and getting into, now we're going to return your check. That's my only point, and I just don't see the harm. I don't see any value at all in leaving it blank.
So how about this to perhaps try to accomplish both goals? Just have a statement in the form that does not stipulate the region for anybody, but that the undersigned understands that they're not intending to apply for Region C, for a type 1 casino
would do it.
license on Region C. That's the one thing that we will not be able to accept. Otherwise, if it's a slots parlor anywhere, if it's a type 1 in any region, A, B, A or B,
By signing here, I indicate
by
I
signing
am
here,
not,
you understand, and you're not
not-
running for Region C,
not an
type
Region
1.
C.
Well, we wouldn't accept those anyways, but
Well, that's.
say I'm
But
an
you're
operator.
you're stating that clearly.
You're stating
You're
that.
stating that clearly, but let's say, as the chairman gave the example, I'm currently poking around Western Massachusetts. I'm sizing up a business strategy and the competition, and maybe I do want to consider Region B. So if I'm that operator and I'm coming in to put down my 400,000, I say, and I mark Region A, does that limit me in my conversations with the state agencies to only issues pertaining to the Region A communities? But if I say Region A and B, now I can talk to them potentially about other sites within Region B.
Well, yeah, now that you mention it, so if you only said A, but in your heart of hearts, you really were interested in B, you'll give us your
I have-
400,000.
I have access now to a state agency where I
Right.
can begin to poke around and
About
maybe
anything.
talk about some
Right.
issues related to
Right.
a community in Region B.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, we're clearly saying, for some it'll be, they're gonna put their stake in the ground and say, Region A is, Region A, this is where I wanna come in and begin to have a conversation. If we're using language that blocks anything in Region C, which is, I think to Commissioner Cameron's point, and it's a good one, it's forbidden, but I may wanna say A and B to maybe, does it give the agencies they're gonna be talking to some indication of general idea of where they may wanna be?
Yeah. I think everybody gets their marginal point with Commissioner Zuniga's approach. We just make it clear that you are saying here that you're not an applicant for Regency.
Yeah.
That makes it four square, and then they can fill in whatever they want on A and B,
A and B or leave blank.
or be blank, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah,
reason.
that makes a lot of sense. That
Okay.
is
Just not
exactly makes the point.
Right.
That it clearly states that we will not be accepting.
Right.
And if someone later on has an interest, that clearly is an integrity issue. So that accomplishes the goal, I would agree.
Okay.
I'm done for good ideas.
It's a good one.
It's a good thing we're on the second to last agenda.
Right. You run out of steam just in time. Okay, did we vote on that last time? Did we vote on that form? Can we just agree now to edit that? So we'll edit that.
Sure.
And reissue and replace the one that's up there. Okay, maybe if, Janice, if you can help me remember, I can do that either today or tomorrow. Okay, we are done. Any other business that was not anticipated by the chair? Anything else? Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you, folks.
Thank